Porn is a gateway to destructive forces in your marriage. There's this evil satanic force that wants to destroy.
When you have children, everything changes. Here is what I wasn't prepared for. One of the biggest reasons why we named this podcast Home on the Rock is from the Bible verses from the Sermon on the Mount. And if you're not a person of faith, that's okay. This can still bring some wisdom into what we're doing here. It's the storms for us really came when we went through our first pregnancy, when we had our first child, when we went from one child to two, when we had a miscarriage. Those are the storms that came for us. And in that Bible verse, it just talks about how the storms came, the winds came, and I'm paraphrasing, but the house, it did not fall. And for us, because the wise man built his house on the rock, right? And for us, like that firm, strong foundation of family, for us is now rooted in our faith and in Christ. And even if that's not there for you fully yet, just to really desire that strength, that foundation of family, to have that strong, connected family that can withstand the storms. And that starts with a strong, connected marriage. And we've seen so many close friends around us and relationships around us that haven't withstood the storms. And they're now in homes where a child is either with mom sometimes or dad sometimes. And I do believe that God does have a special, beautiful design for family and being in it in a partnership and raising children in a partnership. I am very different than my husband. We're created very differently. My children come to me, like you said, you went to your mother, like our children come to me. I am the more nurturing one. Not that we're not both loving and nurturing and caring, but we do hold different roles. And I see you doing tackle time with our sons. And I'm like, I'm so glad they have a father. I'm so glad they have a father that likes to get dirty and play with worms. And I don't have to do those things because I'm not into that. They get a beautiful dynamic with your personality and mine, your adventurous side, my loving side. Like, they're getting something different from both of us. And I do think that children have the best chance to experience the beauty that God has designed for our lives, like when they grow up in a family that's together and when they have loving relationships that help them build healthy, secure attachments, help them build strong, confident identities, and when they see love and honor modeled for them in a way that they'll go on to replicate in their life. The storms are going to come in this season. The season that we're still in. You know, we have a 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. And it's been crazy. How would you describe the storms? Here's one thing that I'll say. People always talk about when you have children, everything changes. That's what I hear. I heard it all the time. Did you ever hear that? When you have children, everything changes. Here is what I wasn't prepared for. And here, I think, is what rocked us the most. When we had children, we changed. I especially. To the point where I would look in the mirror and wouldn't even know myself. And how do you stay connected with your partner when you don't even feel connected to yourself? When you don't even know who you are anymore? And so how would you describe the storms that came?
There were a lot, At the time, wasn't really a spiritual person. I would say really wasn't raised religiously in any way. Didn't believe in ghosts. Still don't know if I believe in ghosts, but
just the Holy Ghost.
I guess, the Holy Spirit. Didn't really have a spiritual, foundation to my belief system. And so when you talk about the storms now, do I believe that there's evil in the world? Do I believe that there's a force? Some might call it Satan. As a Christian, I would say there's this evil satanic force that wants to destroy, wants to kill, steal, and destroy. And the place where it's going to cause the most damage, like the most bang for your buck, the biggest ROI you're going to get is if you can destroy a marriage, right? And so how were we attacked in our marriage? Or what were the storms that we faced? Well, porn is a gateway to destructive forces in your marriage. And what's interesting about that is that I used to watch porn in our marriage, and you knew it, and we talked about it a little bit. We didn't talk about it in detail, but we looked at it as kind of like a means to an end, as it wasn't like, like physically cheating on you with somebody else, but it was a, I don't know, thing that I think culturally we've decided, like, men, it's okay to do. Like, we start masturbating when we're young because it's something that we just do as human beings. And what's interesting about that is, again, not being raised religiously, like, the last thing I ever want my sons to feel is shame for who they are and the human condition that exists in them, which, if I were to define the human condition, it's the things that make us human, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The things that make us human. And I grew up, porn and masturbating is such a culturally accepted thing here in the United States that I didn't really know it to be any different. And being part Brazilian, like, there's a hypersexualized culture that I come from. And so there are a lot of things, I would say, from a sexual nature or sense that are condoned or even accepted, and just, it's normal. And so growing up watching porn, then getting married, continuing to watch porn, continuing to masturbate, like, that was something that was just normal. And I didn't think anything really of it. But then we started to have conversations about it. And what I found through that was, like, it makes me a more lustful person. And that's obviously not good for our marriage. Like, you just know that's not good for your marriage. It just, whether you have this moral authority or not, like, I think every man out there, even the atheist, feels probably some type of wrong. If you're in a relationship, and maybe you're polygamous and the rules of that relationship are totally different than a monogamous one. But if you're in a relationship, and even if you don't believe in God, you're an atheist, and you are masturbating, and why do you hide it? Maybe you do it in front of your partner. Maybe they feel weird about it. So then maybe you hide it. So then, like, why? Why do we feel that way? Even without maybe a moral authority to say that it's wrong. It's because I think there's something, we just believe that there's, again, something wrong about it. Being in a relationship with you, we started to have more and more conversations, and this is even before, we became Christians, but there was something about it that you didn't feel good about. There's something about it that I didn't feel good about, like I had to hide it, or I had to, like, be sneaky about it. And that in itself is a red flag, just about the nature of it, right? Even though it's culturally normal and accepted, and couples do it and all that. And again, I'm not here to tell couples what to do. I'm here to just talk about our experience and, share what either worked for us or didn't work for us. And eventually got to a point where we had conversations about porn, and it didn't work for us in our relationship anymore. And we said that, hey, we, part of it, I would say, in large part, honestly, is, now that I'm talking about it and thinking back about it, like, what were the problems with it? Well, first of all, like, it was an easy way for me to avoid intimacy with you. Like, it felt like there were challenges in our relationship. You said, what were the storms? We had a miscarriage. There was a long period of time we weren't intimate.
Yeah, let's talk about the timing, actually, because when we first got married, we never even talked about pornography, except for maybe that we just, I don't know, we might have had some conversations about it. It wasn't like a thing because, well, we were having a lot of sex and it was awesome. So I don't think that there was really like that
need or go to. Like, I think I actually, a funny thing, I remember being on the golf course talking to some of my friends, and, like, we were talking about porn, and I was like, I haven't looked at porn in, like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years into our relationship or something like that. And they all looked at me like I was crazy, like, what? And I was like, no, like, we're having plenty of sex. I'm totally content in that, part of my life.
And then, and I think, like, desire, right? Like, when we even were first dating, I think my desire was, like, even more through the roof than yours. And I remember even having it, we're like, why aren't you initiating? Is it like it was almost like the flipped dynamic in a sense of, like, we just always wanted to have sex, and then the storm that came that took that off of where we were used to it being was pregnancy. And, initially what happened is I got so sick, like for the first 3 months of our first pregnancy.
Morning sickness, yeah.
Not even morning sickness. It was like day in,
Well, I know, but that's what
day
it's
out.
called.
It's called morning sickness, which I don't know. Whoever only is sick in the morning, I got very, very sick to the point where like I just like couldn't do much but like lay around, throw up a lot. I was super dizzy all the time. And then, going through this experience of my body changing and like my belly starting to protrude, and, probably my background with fitness competitions and having every inch of my physical body judged and putting myself into those situations, and like having such an emphasis on my physical body, perfectionism, whatever you want to call it, the actual experience of seeing my body change was intense. I guess that's the best way I would describe it. It's like I had gratitude, and I had done a lot of like healing as I stepped away from that sport and different things. And we talked a lot and worked through a lot of that. So I wasn't as hooked in on like my body has to look a certain way, but it was very crazy to see it starting to look different than what I had been used to, and also what I know you had been used to. And so there was this element of like where I used to be very comfortable naked or comfortable like in that situation of intimacy with you, like, yeah, leave the lights on, like whatever. It turned into almost this like wanting to cover up or hide, or just felt just uncomfortable in my own body. And so that started to like, we would still have sex during pregnancy. But then of course, like it gets into like third trimester, and then it's like huge belly. It was like very awkward for me. And, thinking about like, I feel like a mother, there's like this baby moving in my belly, like to go and have sex. I mean, I hear some women get like super, like they want to have sex all the time when they're pregnant. And that wasn't my experience. I wasn't like wanting to have sex all the time when I was pregnant. I was just like, I loved being pregnant, and I loved our intimacy. I feel like our intimacy really deepened during that experience. We were growing together. We were reading books together. We were going to every single appointment together. I feel like we got really close in that experience. So it wasn't like a thing yet, but that's kind of where it started with like my body, my physical changes. And then after having our first child, that's where things really like took a tailspin. And we don't have to go into the whole like postpartum conversation at the moment, because I think that could be its own thing. But I ended up with a cesarean, and then we had a college child, and we weren't sleeping, and we handled that dynamic poorly in some ways. And, we figured it out as we went, which I think is what a lot of people just end up doing. And I don't feel like it has to be that way. I feel like you can be more prepared than we were. And then to get an IUD. So like after you have a baby, you end up bleeding for several weeks. You're not supposed to have sex for at least 6 weeks. And then we definitely did not want to have another baby at that time, because it was a really like traumatic experience. And I was like, I don't know if I ever want to have another baby after that. And so I got an IUD put in, but the IUD didn't mix well with my body. So I was continuously bleeding for gosh, how many months did we go through that? And then we tried another type of an IUD with hormones. Then, all of these different things with my like actual physical body, like healing from birth, and then bleeding for months on end with, the IUD experience, and then also being very deep in like postpartum anxiety, and where I wasn't even driving my car. I was terrified to drive my car for 5 months. I was almost agoraphobic with our child. Like I was going through a lot to where we literally just weren't having sex at all. And then we kind of like worked through some of that to where we were starting to have sex again. And we ended up removing the IUD when our firstborn was like 1. And we're like, okay, we're ready to like try and have another child. Or was he almost 2 at this point?
No, he was like 1.
He was like 1. Yeah, because he would have been 2 when we had that baby. And so we had the IUD removed. And so then it's like, oh, no more period. Yeah, that went on for almost a year of just like constantly being in a cycle because the birth control wasn't working. And then we got pregnant quickly. It was like in a month or something, a month or 2.
After you took the IUD.
After we took the IUD out. So we're like, yeah, we can have sex again. But then we got pregnant right away. And then we went through, 6 or 9 weeks of that pregnancy. And then we ended up miscarrying. And it was a really crazy miscarriage situation that we also won't completely dive into, but just like more body changes, adding more trauma onto it while already in postpartum. Then you add this in. And it got to the point where I like almost felt like a teenage girl who was like being kissed for the first time. Like I was so uncomfortable being touched. And it had nothing to do with Thiago. It had nothing to do with you, with my husband. It just had to do with like me and how I felt in my body and the lot that I had to work through. And so in all of that, I wanted nothing to do with sex at that point. And I still wanted to be affectionate with you. I still wanted to hold your hand. I still wanted to hug and kiss on you. So it wasn't that I wanted nothing to do with you. It was I wanted nothing to do with sex. And so when you came to me and you were honest about like, hey, I've been watching porn, I felt in my gut like, ugh, I don't like that. But at the same time, I was like, well, yeah, you have needs and I'm not meeting those needs. And which is a lie, by the way, that I would never say now. Like we as humans have needs, but they should never surpass the well-being of your wife or of your relationship. Like if your wife is a paraplegic, I don't feel like that gives you the green light to go watch porn. I personally would just say that that was a lie that was coming through me and that I was justifying something that was actually really hurting our relationship, because there's a lot else that goes on during porn than just like the act of masturbation. I think there are spiritual things going on during the experience of porn. I think that it deteriorates your soul. It makes you less of a man and you stop showing up as your best self in a lot of ways. And I think that it really created a wedge. It was a tool that was used, that the enemy used to really deepen the wedge in our relationship when we were in a really vulnerable space. And out of the love that we both had for each other, you were honest with me about it. I said, yes, I gave you the blessing, quote unquote. But deep down, we both knew that it wasn't good and it wasn't right. But we were in this dark space. And that was really where I'd say where the storm was, raging.
Yeah, I mean, we had the stress of our firstborn child. We had the miscarriage. So we had, the demands of the family life where, I think a lot of people can relate. Wow, more expensive, got to work more, make more money, which means we're spending less time together. We're obviously not sleeping as well as we used to. So all these different kind of dynamics at play, chipping away at our intimacy. And then, you bring porn into the mix on top of something like that. And for me, it was just kind of an easy, like you said, made me less of a man. How? Like you might hear that and be like, well, what does that mean? And here's what that meant for us specifically was that if I could go meet my needs through porn, then I was less affectionate with you, and in a way, like, were there times when I'm affectionate? We kind of had to relearn how to be intimate, because I would say like a big part of our relationship and our intimacy and our connection was very physical for a long time.
It was
before we had kids. It was easy.
We didn't have to work for it.
We didn't have to. It was awesome. And, so then we have a kid and then we're having to relearn, and then we're different people. And I would say like that was some of the lows of our relationship where, porn came into the mix too, where I felt like I was a different person. I felt like I had married a different person. I felt like everything was different. And none of it was like what I thought we originally had all signed up for, right? And so then it was just like, well, how do we navigate this space? And I'm like, well, I still got these needs. She's giving me the blessing. So, it's all good. But in reality, yeah, when I look back, it's like, I don't know, you don't try as hard. Like, you just don't try and show up as be your best self. At least I didn't. That's what I should say. I didn't try as hard. I didn't show up to be my best self when I knew, like, things were tough. I don't know. It felt like I couldn't win in some ways. Like, it felt like when I put in effort, I would get things wrong because I was like relearning like who you were and how to be a good husband. And then I felt like, okay, well, if I'm not going to do this right anyway, let me just recluse or retract, and I can meet my own needs. And then it makes you not want to show up as much, and it becomes this vicious cycle of like,
probably also shame intertwined too. Like, that you're doing something harmful. Like, you're not acknowledging it, but
Well, and I think some of the shame comes from you're doing that thing, and then when you're using porn, like, I think you start looking at other girls a little bit differently, honestly, and that kind of lustful nature, like where it's not technically cheating, but like, I think if you're already cheating in a way,
well, in the Bible,
like,
it
imagine
says if you're cheating in your heart, it is adultery,
right?
That's 100% what that means,
Right. Like, so like for me, it was never really an emotional thing, right? Like, I think sometimes women tend to gravitate more towards emotional connections and physical ones. Like, this was a very physical thing. But then what it does, and I don't know if many guys are willing to admit this, but if you're probably watching porn in your relationship, you're probably talking about girls differently that aren't your wife. You're probably looking at other girls that aren't your wife differently than you would if you weren't watching porn.
and mind you, while your wife is in her most vulnerable state that she's ever been, in feeling the least sexy she's probably ever felt, there's like so much beauty and admiration, and just like you have this beautiful baby bump. And I know some women don't love being pregnant. I loved it, and I felt beautiful pregnant. I felt yeah, just so feminine, and just like I'm doing what God put me here to do, like so close to God. At that time, I wasn't a Christian. I didn't know exactly how I would describe it or what I was feeling, but I just felt in my element. And like, you have this beautiful belly, and people like let you, okay, the perfect example, you walk into a women's restroom and the women all move aside and let you pee because they know that the pregnant girl has to pee. Like, there's like this relationship with women, and this like, men would come and like ask if they could put their hands on my belly. Like, everyone just loves pregnancy, and it's so honored. And then you have your baby, and your body is almost like, it's not the pregnant body, but it still kind of is. You still kind of look pregnant. I still look like 5 months pregnant, but you have this belly that my experience was like, I went from wanting to like share it with the world to like wanting to hide it, and like no clothes fit me properly. Like, I didn't want to wear big loose clothes. I couldn't wear little tight clothes. Like, I was just very much in this space of like, I don't even know, like, when I look at my body in the mirror, like, I had never been in that experience before. So I didn't know, like, 2 years from now, you'll feel like you've kind of like, recalibrated. And, I didn't know that. Nobody had ever like said that to me. But then I would see on Instagram this mom who had a baby 6 weeks ago. She's like, oh, look at my perfect flat belly. I'm like, how is that even possible? And I know for some women it is, and they bounce back really quickly. And I've had some interesting birth experiences. Like, that wasn't my experience. I did not bounce back quickly. I gained 51 pounds. And then my tummy almost looked like a deflated balloon after. And, there's just, so much of that going on to then, like, in the back of my head know that, yeah, I don't want to be intimate with my husband, not in like a physical, sexual way, because I don't feel sexy and I don't, and I know that he knows what I used to look like, even though that you weren't saying any of this to me. These were like my insecurities. He knows what I used to look like. Like, I don't want to show him what I look like now. Um, you know, and also knowing that he's looking at other women, that look like how I used to look, so there's almost just this dynamic of like, kicking your wife when she's down almost. And again, that wasn't at all the intention. And I didn't even know that that's how I was feeling. Like it's like in a hindsight, looking back and understanding this was the dynamic that was going on. Because I know had I shared this with you at that time, you absolutely would have respected that and you would have stopped. Like, that's like in our storms, love never left us. In our storms, respect never left us. Now, were we acting respectful? No, but we were like doing our best, like for what we were experiencing. We had never been through that before. We were attempting to be respectful and we were failing. But ultimately, love never left at all. We even acknowledged and talked to each other about, oh my gosh, I feel distant. Like, what's going on with us? Like, I don't even know who I am. I'm in the mud. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to get past this. Like, we shared these things with each other. And yet we still got so deteriorated and distant, even with good intentions, with a loving, like wholehearted, like loving each other nature, but just in these like dark spaces that we were navigating for the first time and failing at. And I think that that's, a big reason why we're so inspired to talk about this now, because it's different like when you're on the other side of it and you're like, oh my gosh, had we not used some of these tools, had some of these hard conversations, had the willingness and the endurance and the fight in us to fight for us, we might not be sitting here today. Even as much as we loved each other, we did almost lose each other. And I don't want people to lose each other. And there are a lot of people out there that haven't gone through those personal development courses that we have over the last 10 years of our relationship. There are people who are navigating, dealing with their own demons and trauma that they've never brought to the surface and acknowledged, and that they're passing on into their marriage, blaming their partner for, hurting their child over. And again, so much of it is not intentional. It's a lack of awareness. It's a lack of understanding. And I just want to bring light to some of this stuff and help give people hope that if they're in that stage where we were, to just like hold on. And I'm so glad that we held on, and like we're so much better for it. Like it's almost crazy looking back of like, wow, it feels so different now.
I mean, it tested our commitment, it tested my commitment.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not proud to admit that for you, it felt like I was kicking you while you were down. It just felt like we were, in the moment, it's like, well, we're just different people, right? Like she's showing up totally differently. I'm showing up differently. Like we've grown, I think a lot of people say, why do they get divorced? They grow apart. This is what it looks like in the moment, right? What it looks like in the moment is the trials and the tribulations. We don't show up as our best selves. And I think when we show up at the altar, we're in a fresh suit, you're in a white dress, everybody's there to support you. But then in reality, what it looks like, it's just me and you, right? And God, obviously. At the time, we didn't really think he was there with us. We weren't thinking of it that way. But like, it's me and you in the moment. We're not in a suit. and address. We're actually in our worst, whatever that looks like, right? Like the body changes that you've experienced compared to your past, as you put it, like you're not the same person. I'm a guy who's using porn all the time, who's, not challenging myself. I was playing video games, different points of that, like just obviously not who we were standing at the altar, right? That's what it really looks like when those things hit. And so growing apart really, I think, is a different way of saying, like, I don't know, not holding ourselves accountable, not being our best, not being overwhelmed in a lot of ways. And not that that makes it any better, but we had, I'd say, a lot of tools and skills that we learned from the personal growth and development space. And I think we were trying them. A lot of it was communication based, checking in with each other. And I think that kept us holding on until we went to that Tony event, where then it was like a big breakthrough, I think, where it was, learning about the 3 C's and the 3 U's, and looking at like how this cycle of when I'm feeling controlled, or you're closed off, or I'm being criticized and what felt like all the time, then, I'm also, or sometimes like I do these other things first, right? Where I'm not understanding you.
I'm feeling unsafe.
You're feeling unsafe and you're feeling unseen, right? Like I'm not doing those things first. It doesn't matter which comes first, honestly, but it becomes this vicious cycle where, the 3 C's towards me, the 3 U's towards you. And essentially then what happens is we lose that attraction, we lose that polarity, that spark, that, the differences, what we used to like about each other now, like just we resent, or we are annoyed by, or, we become kind of like catty or short, or, with each other, we kind of bicker, they're talking about old couples that bicker, but like, I don't know, that can really be insidious, honestly. I don't want to normalize bickering, because at the end of the day, like then this wedge of resentment grows and you grow apart. And I think that's really what it looks like, is what at first seems like an attraction. And, Tony talked about this, like even the things that drive you crazy, you love about them. But then when you're in this depolarized state, the things that drive you crazy make you like want to push them away. And I didn't know, or I couldn't label those things, or I wasn't aware of it in the moment. And it just felt like almost like, oh my gosh, like, how can we come back from this? How do we get back? And then Tony explained, like, well, there's different ways of doing that. But just, when you become in this depolarized state, then you really just have to stop worrying about yourself and stop going I, which takes you out of this victim. I'm a victim in this relationship. She's not meeting my needs. She's a different person. Like it's a lot of blame and a lot of like what I need and what I want and all those things. And instead being like hyper focused on like, how can I show up for this other person? Right? That ends up being the solution to a lot of these things. And first having that awareness of really how bad it was, how bad it got, to then be able to have more conversations about it, see what's not working, and ultimately recommit and say, this sucks, this is shit, this is hard, and what are we going to do about it? We got to walk away from it? Are we going to go all in on this and actually work together as a team to get through it? And that's what we decided to do. And I forget what the original question was, but I think it was
the storms. We're talking about.
Yeah, the storms were, the miscarriage, the lack of intimacy, the stress. A lot of couples face the financial stress of having kids. It was, a torture tactic, which is sleep deprivation, all these things on top of growing as human beings, but in some ways being forced to grow by our environment, and then choosing like, well, how do we want to grow together again intentionally? How do we want to do that? And, if we didn't have the hard conversations that we learned about from personal growth and development, if we didn't communicate a lot, if we didn't then have the awareness of this like depolarization cycle that we were in, because then it was like, whoa, she's feeling these things and I'm contributing to that. I'm feeling these things and she's contributed to that. And both of us being aware of it at the same time then took it completely out of like, you're wrong for all this stuff. And it became, whoa, how can I take responsibility for how I'm helping her feel unsafe? Where am I having her feel unseen? Where is she not feeling understood in the ways in which I'm showing up?
Yeah.
Right? And a specific one, I would say, like when we would get in arguments, it's like her not feeling understood. Guys, this is a big one. I'm talking to you, where it's like agree to disagree. And that would be how I would go about some of the things in our arguments. And I would say, like, I don't want to argue with you. And I think sometimes you're not even trying to argue, even though you are arguing. You are wanting to be understood. You're wanting to continue to talk about something, even if it seems like it's a lot and we're beating a dead horse. To me, sometimes it feels that way. It's because you're really trying to get understanding and you're seeing it in a lot of different ways. And we're going on and on and on about it. And a lot of times early on in those conversations, I would be like, agree to disagree. And I would shut down the conversation and just be done with it. Well, you're not going to feel understood when I do that. And so what ended up happening was I think we grew in how we, resolved our conflicts, right? I think it became more constructive. And I think that we had some real world skills later on. Like this is before we found Christ. Like we got through it without having that foundation. But I think what we've learned now in hindsight too is like, had there been a lot more grace, which is a newer word in my vocabulary, having become a Christian is like this grace that we receive from God. Like, how can I be so gracious with you in our relationship to where it's not like I'm like, she can punch me in the face and I'm just gonna be like, oh, I love you anyway. It's like, how can I really, instead of having her feel kicked when she's down, have you feel like understood when you're having a hard time, have you feel seen? Like that is grace, right? In a way, like, and so that combination has really been powerful, I think, because there were a lot of storms that hit us there for the first, I don't know how long that lasted, but it was hard.
Well, so much of what actually did save our relationship and so much what came out of that. And here's the crazy part is when it was that bad, neither of us were actually acknowledging it was that bad. It wasn't even like, I almost felt blindsided when you told me that you didn't know if we were compatible anymore. I was like, what are you talking about? My identity was so rooted in our marriage because I felt so accomplished in it. I felt so proud of our marriage and proud that we said yes to each other and had started to create this life together, and that we did choose to grow together and we did have these conversations, and we were living life in a partnership that I always wanted. And so when the storms did come, I was so focused on like trying to get to know myself again that I hadn't truly acknowledged. Like I knew things were off and like we were like snippy with each other. Like I could feel it, but I couldn't define it. And it made me sad, but I knew that we still loved each other. We still spent so much time together. It wasn't like we did. You were never like leaving. Like we've never been to go out to the bars, throw a bunch of drinks back with the guys or the girl. Like we've never had that type of disrespect in our relationship. Like we haven't like ever treated each other that way. Like when things are hard, we weren't sleeping in different beds. We weren't ever like in a state where somebody would look and be like, oh, you guys are in trouble. Nor I was like, I knew we weren't like great in a sense of like connectedness, but I didn't like really know we were in trouble until like looking back, or even in that time where we had that conversation, I'm like, we're in trouble. Like, whoa, I didn't even think that was possible for us. Like that was how I experienced that of like, what? Like I knew we were going through a hard time, but like in my mind, I'm like, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. We're in a season. We're going to get through it. And what was going on in your mind is, I don't know if we're compatible. This is hard. I don't know if we're compatible. I don't know if we're compatible. And so I was just not as aware, because even though we were talking about this is challenging, this is hard, we're being snippy with each other, what's going on, what can we do to fix this, and trying to have conversations, I think sometimes conversations like are an evolution. And even though you're trying to have them, it's very hard to resolve something when you don't fully understand what's happening. And what really saved our marriage, I'll go back to that, is in that event, that personal development event that we're talking about, and like when you were able to bring that to the surface and we were able to talk about something that like we didn't fully know that like that's something that you had been feeling but not even acknowledging to yourself, right? Like how often do we have these things in our mind?
The scary thought that I was acknowledging in myself that like I didn't want to share with you when we were going through it is like, are we right for each other? Like, are we like, we seemed so right and everything was so right. And now it seems like everything is so wrong. I'm like, and if this is who we are, that's not who we were. Like, are we right for each other? And that was a question that I kept asking myself, which later I saw was like, are we no longer compatible?
And what a dangerous question to have ruminating for a marriage, right? Like, what a dangerous
shame
thing
to admit
to have in your heart.
That I was thinking it, ashamed to want to, like, I was terrified to even say that to you.
Yeah.
Right? Terrified. I mean, just the implications of that, because, you know, like I would logically, obviously justify and be like, do you want a divorce? Like, you don't want to split up. Like, you want your kids, you want to be with her, you loved her. Like, that person is still inside of her. Like, you know, of course, none of this was looking at like how I could be better.
Right.
In that state.
Yeah.
None of this was like looking at like, you know, where could I improve? Right. But it's just looking outward when you're in that state, or when I was in that state, I should say. And, you know, it was like, well, of course I want all those things. I do. Like, I don't want the alternative at all. And then it's like, but this is so hard and this is so bad. And this is like, just this, like, you know, again, like when we were at the altar, like that's not what you envision at the altar. You know, anyway.
But that, what that event did for us is so biblical in a sense of you were able to confess. You know, we hear about confession, and I know before I knew Christ, like I thought of confession as like almost this like condemnation. Let me tell you this so you can judge me, or I'm so wrong, or like no, like confession is just like owning, like confessing what's really there, being real, right? And then the repentance is like being like allowing ourselves to change our ideas, to change and to shift from the path of porn, the path of I, self, selfish thoughts, selfish, all of these things, to like, this is my commitment. I repent and I choose this. I choose you no matter what. And I know what that means now. And that's why these things work. Like personal development, I hear so often is like so separate from spirit, right? And I would say, yes, it has its pitfalls, and we don't have to go into this right now. But ultimately, the things that work in personal development are rooted in the Bible. And the beautiful evolution when we can be in this state of we have a new baby, we have a new life, and we are different people. To go into it knowing and allowing and expecting the space of we are going to change. Yes, our life is going to change, but we are going to change. And instead of you are supposed to be back in the body that I married, you are supposed to be the same exact personality that I married, you are supposed to be all of these things that I married. Instead, it's like, I am so curious and excited to see you on the other side of this and get to know you again. Because that's really what it's taken. And then if you make that effort and you do the work and you're awake through it, and you don't just throw in the towel and let yourself go and settle for mediocre. If you're committed to being connected, if you're committed to having a beautiful marriage, a beautiful connection with your spouse, a beautiful connection with your children. You want to show up being full of joy, truly being able to experience the joys that parenthood, yes, the challenges, but truly the joys the parenthood and marriage have to offer. I would never trade places with who I was before I became a mom. And I would never have you trade places as the husband you were before you became a father, the husband that you are to me now. I would never trade places with the wife that I used to be to you either. And this has made us so much better. But we had to go through all of that to have become who we've become today. And I feel that so many people give up and they don't get to see who they've become on the other side. They lose each other. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I want to help more people stay together and rediscover who they are, rediscover who their spouse is, and have that be a beautiful experience and get rid of that pressure of having to go back and actually choosing that they don't want to go back because you can't anyway.
We've talked about a lot of different things, and I guess maybe if I had one more question to ask, it would be, knowing what you know now, if there's one thing somebody can do because they're about to have their first baby or they're looking at their partner, and they're like, okay, well, we're about to have a baby, I think you're the one, or you want to be with that person, right? You want the marriage or you want the relationship to work. Maybe you want to get married. Maybe you're already married and you want to continue to move forward and you're getting ready to have a baby and there's a ton of unknown coming your way. What's one thing they could do to just start to help their relationship become rock solid before the baby's born?
You said one thing. It's very hard for me to say one
Just
thing.
pick one.
I'd say that our pregnancy was a really beautiful experience. And we really grew together in that. And I actually really loved how you showed up for me in that. I didn't feel like it was my pregnancy and you were observing. I felt like you were very much a part of it with me. And I hear a lot of women say that they're going to the doctor's appointment and they go by themselves and their husband doesn't go with them or doesn't make it a priority to be there for the ultrasounds, or even what we used to do. You read the books, you researched, you ordered my supplements, you told me how much to take. You wrote my list of please take this for your health, for the health of our baby. You would lay beside me every Wednesday night and we would read in one of the books about where our baby was, what size our baby was, what our baby was experiencing. They're getting fingerprints this month, and and this is what your wife's body is actually going through. And we learned together. I never felt like you weren't with me during that pregnancy all the way through to the very end. You didn't miss a single appointment with me. When I was sick, you were trying to bring me ice water. You were doing everything that I asked, and then some. You would, if I was hungry, where are we going to eat? What do you want? You were very caring and very much a participant in that. And I really appreciated that. So that's the one thing I would say is, if you're pregnant for the first time, if your wife is pregnant for the first time, ask her how you can support. And sometimes because you're going through it for the first time together, she might not have all the answers, right? Like, if you would have come to hold my hair back while I was throwing up, I would have been like, get out of here. I personally like to throw up in privacy.
They're solo puker.
But some women might appreciate, like, hey, babe, how can I support you? Will you hold my hair back when I'm throwing up? Like, I don't know. Whatever it is, truly humble yourself, be of service, and know that even though you can't control the situation, you can absolutely be there and support. And for the women, I would also say humble yourself and have some grace for your husband, in that if you don't express to him how you're feeling or what you're needing, like, don't expect him to just know, because it's a new experience for both of you. And know that your hormones are absolutely going to make you crazy and make you stress about things that you've never stressed about before. They'll have you like crave things you've never craved before. Your body, you're going to look down and not recognize yourself. You'll have all these things. And I would encourage you, like, talk to your husband so he understands. And sometimes getting a book. So I'll say we read the What to Expect When You're Expecting book, like older versions. I don't love some of the terminology that's been put into the newer versions. I just think there's some, ideology in there that I don't agree with. So I would say if you're going to get that book, get like 10 years ago book. And there are apps now that you can find that like tell you what your body's going through, tell your husband what your body's going through. And it's different, like, than complaining all the time. Like, nobody likes to be around a complainer. You don't have like a license to complain because you're pregnant. Try to see the positive, but you can be honest about like what your body's going through. And sometimes reading it from a third party source, like a book or an app, reading it with your husband can really help you both understand. Like, this is why you're getting headaches. This is why your pelvis is hurting. And men give a lot of foot rubs. If your wife is into it, I just know like my feet hurt through my whole pregnancy. And like that was such a special thing too. So yeah, those are just some of the ways I would say to like really go into that first pregnancy as a partnership, not like my wife's pregnant, she's got it, I can't do anything about it, as opposed to like being in it with her in every possible way that you can.
I mean, there are some things you can divide and conquer on, and sometimes out of necessity you have to, but I think I really enjoyed showing up for that stuff, and I really got a lot out of reading it, and I thought it was such a fascinating thing. And maybe part of me being so hands-on with your nutrition protocol was because I had a background in that and wanted the best for our kid, right? But there's ways, like the Better Baby book's a great book.
Oh yeah, by Dave Asprey, the Better Baby book.
When it comes to supplementing, nutrition, and you also don't want to be hyper controlling too, because it's a shared experience.
Yeah, there were times I couldn't take my supplements because I was so sick, and you were like, okay.
Right.
Like it's not like you don't ever want to be like, eat this, do this,
I slipped them in her smoothies when she wasn't licking. So.
I'm so grateful that you were so persistent with that, but you were also like, not pushing it on me. Like I've heard, some stories of where, the man is like judgmental of what the woman's eating. And
did you eat a lot of your first pregnancy? Mexican food?
Oh my gosh.
Cinnamon rolls.
Yeah. And then
the second one, you ate a lot of sushi.
Yeah. I broke the rules.
We did that. We're not telling anybody else that they should do that.
Not the red sushi. I just eat like the less mercury stuff. But I just wanted it all the time. And I wanted a lot of ranch dressing during the pregnancy. But,
By the way, that was only like 5, 6, 7 things maybe that you mentioned there. Asked for, but there's only a few.
Well, there you go. Added bonus. Cool. Do you have anything else to say?
I'm lucky in a lot of ways, so I don't want to stand on my soapbox and preach, right? God has been graceful in my life in more ways than I can ever count. But it's so important who you decide to have children with, because at the end of the day, there's so many broken households that could have been, and there's so many children out there living in fatherless homes, and it is such a crime against humanity. Not that people are committing that crime, but just that it is such a horrible thing for these children. And the statistics around fatherless homes, and not that moms aren't great at raising kids. There are a lot of moms doing a phenomenal job raising their kids. And I think that the best shot a kid has in life is coming from, parents that are meant for each other, that are willing to do whatever it takes to raise these children and give them the best odds and chances in life. And the more you can be a team, the better team that you are, the more really that your values align, that you're with the right person who, especially in today's society, because there are so many forces attempting to divide and separate children from parents right now. It's easy. It's actually really easy in a lot of ways to have children separated from parents. And I won't go into like the million different ways that that's happening. But being with the right person that you want to raise kids with is so critical. And even through all the things that we've been through, that commitment that we re-got, I don't think that's a real word, that we got clear on again, through the adversity and the challenges is something that maybe if you're not sure that you're compatible with your person, if you are pregnant and the person that you're with, you can't imagine them being the mother of your children, or the person that you're with, like you're so over the moon, regardless of the situation that you're in, we can always become better versions of ourselves, and we can control what we can control, I can't change you. I can't shape you. You're outside of my locus of control. But what I can do is, no matter who I'm with, no matter what situation that I'm in, no matter what my circumstances dictate, I can choose. And I'm so grateful for the personal growth and development space, because they taught me this, is that I can choose how I respond to the situation, and I can show up to be a better person. I can show up and be a better co-parent. I can show up and be a better father. I can show up and be a better husband. I can show up and be, a better boyfriend, whatever I am in that situation. And we need to do that for our kids. We need to do that no matter what. And fathers, we got to do whatever we can to have an active role in that child's life. No matter what, we got to figure that out. And that might take extreme humbling, extreme ego death, which is extremely painful, but God's gift to you.
Gotta put that baby first.
If you're in that situation, there's a lot of different therapy out there. There's a lot of different counseling. I'm not somebody who's ever really been to therapy or counseling, so I can't speak to the positives or benefits of it. But what I can say is that there are resources. There are tons of resources, and we have a huge list that we would provide to anybody that's looking.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a position where you're not sure what to do at all, we can definitely connect you with very, very great people or programs or books or whatever to help you, because at the end of the day, parenting is the greatest gift. And being 100% honest, it's also arguably one of the greatest challenges you'll ever face in your life. And it's worth being a parent. It's always worth being a parent.
Oh, yes.
It's always worth it.
It's such a gift.
It's always worth it. It's always, always, always worth it. And so if there's anything you can do, it's you can take responsibility for yourself and show up the best way that you can. And that's what I just encourage every person to do in any situation, in any circumstance.
If I were to do it over again, I would wait till I was married and take who I marry decision very, very seriously, which I did. But I look back to my life and I could be in a very different situation. I was having premarital sex. I was sleeping around, not with tons of guys, but I was absolutely, you know, sleeping with, men that I did not want to have children with and taking that risk. And I could very easily be one of those women, raising a child on my own, or, raising a child within an abusive relationship, or, any of those things. So I never want anyone to listen to us and feel like judged or condemned for the choices that they're making. I do want to encourage, though, to really think about the choices that you're making. And it's only by God's grace that I am in the marriage that I'm in and in the family dynamic that I'm in. And I am incredibly grateful for it, because a lot of the choices that I made could have absolutely robbed this from me. And this, what I have today, wouldn't have been possible in the same way. And so I just would encourage you to make the best of whatever situation that you're in. You are, like, whether you're a single parent or not, like, I have mad respect for a single parent, because we've talked about that a lot too, of how hard it is as a partnership. Like, the challenges of, like, wow, there are two of us. And there are parents that do this with one person all the time. Like, when we had our second baby, I was like, can you not leave for 3 months? Like, can we only be together doing this? Because this is, like, really hard when it's two, And I know that there are single parents out there that, like, however your situation turned out. I mean, some people have lost their spouse, they've become a widow or different things like that. And so we're not looking down at those situations. We just believe that it's the best. I was listening to a woman speak, and she is a single mother and her child is a teenager now. And she said it so beautifully of, like, I am so proud of what I've done. I've done a really great job with my child. And I don't wear being a single mother as a badge of honor. Like, I know that I still would have preferred to have a partner. Not the wrong partner, not an abusive partner, not to say that a single parent household isn't better sometimes than who you did end up having a baby with. It's just to try and think about those choices before that happens is what we're encouraging, because we really, do believe that it's best for all parties to have a really strong, connected family unit that is lasting and enduring. And we want to help more people have that.